Right, so we had some gold players submit their tier lists on what they think the current meta is, where the heroes are at in their games. We've done the bronze tier list and the silver tier list. And now we're going into gold, where it very much looks like so far it might be a bit different than bronze and silver. So, the first tier list we have here, gold 1 support, a bronze DPS, and an unranked tank on PC. So, we're starting with Orisa, Ramattra, Sigma, Kiriko, and Zen in S tier. Now, this is interesting because in a lot of the previous tier lists we've seen in bronze and silver, it's been a lot different. Seeing Orisa in S tier is very surprising to me. Ramattra's been a consistent S tier hero I've seen in like a lot of the tier lists. And I don't mind Kiriko and Zen and even Sigma on this, but like I'm very surprised by Orisa because I thought with the Orisa nerfs recently, Orisa kind of went back to where Orisa was in like season 1, which is like still a good tank, but like not like the most played, but very interesting to see. And then we go to A tier, and I see one hero on this A tier right away that I am very surprised by. We have D.Va, which perfectly fine in A tier. Zarya. Seeing Zarya in A tier is very, very surprising to me. Has Zarya been popping off in a lot of gold games? Like, I'm very surprised to see that. Wrecking Ball, Ashe, Cass, Junkrat, I definitely can see all of them being in A tier. Mei, bit surprising, but I guess if a Mei's popping off in your game. Reaper, which Reaper's like the tank buster in ranked. Even when Reaper's not meta, if somebody goes Reaper against a tank who's just jumping in or feeding, Reaper generally can do well. So I can understand the A tier with that. Ana, Bap, Lucio, Mercy. This is probably the most balanced supports have ever been in Overwatch 2. I have no problem seeing a bunch of supports in the A tier. B tier, we have Reinhardt, Doomfist, Junker Queen, Hog. I'm very surprised by Hog there. Hog, with the recent nerfs, has gotten a lot worse. And actually, I'm looking at the tier list now. There's actually a tank rated lower than Hog on this tier list. So I'm wondering if Hog is just surviving a lot in gold games, or if the person who made this tier list is just struggling against Roadhog in ranked games. Then we have Bastion, Echo, Hanzo, Pharah, Sojourn, Soldier, Torb, Tracer, Widow, Brig, and Moira, all in B tier. Honestly, that's okay. I think all of them in B tier, or some of them in A tier would be fine. Very surprised by Roadhog, though, because then we go to C tier. Winston, Genji, Sim. Okay, I am so surprised by Sim being here. A lot of tier lists, I see Sim anywhere from B to S tier because Sim just gets so much value. And once again, we saw this in the silver tier list. Winston, I did not realize Winston was like, in gold, are you still seeing a lot of like the jump in and just feed playstyle of Winston? Like just jump in, bubble, and then die and go back to spawn? I was thinking more like B tier, right? Because like Winston you can get good value with. Like the bubble alone is just good value. And then D tier, to no surprise, we've seen Sombra on a lot of these lists. I will say in like a top 500 like list right now, Sombra's probably up a little bit now because like the Sombra ball meta, Sombra's pretty decent against ball. Not the worst, but I'm not surprised to see Sombra in D tier on this tier list at all. Let's go to the next one here. We have a gold tank and DPS and unranked support on console. We have Wrecking Ball and Kiriko in S tier. No surprise by that. That is no surprise. Then we go to A tier. See, this is a lot more where I expected some of the heroes to be. Ramattra, Soldier, Ana, Ashe, Cassidy, Junkrat, Mercy, Reinhardt, Sigma, Sojourn, Widow. Not surprised by this A tier right here. This is like all heroes that are very, very strong right now. B tier, we're seeing Lucio, Orisa, Bap, D.Va, Bastion, Brig, Genji, Junker Queen, Reaper, Tracer, Winston, Zen, Zarya, Torb, Hanzo, Mei. That's a lot in B tier. I have a question. Is Zarya playing really well in gold games? I know, like, so far this is a small sample size of, like, tier lists, but so far in the 2 tier lists we've looked at, Zarya's been in A tier and B tier. And a lot of tier lists we see, Zarya's not that high up there. So I'm very curious on how Zarya plays in gold right now, because we're seeing a lot more Zarya there. Also, I noticed we're seeing Lucio a little bit higher up in the tier list. In the bronze and silver one, we see a lot of a different placement of Lucio on those tier lists. And then C tier, we have Doomfist, Hog. Now, this is where I expected Hog to be in Doom. Doom's pretty good, though. I will say that. Moira, Sombra, Sim. I cannot believe how, like, low on the tier list Sim has been so far. Same with Moira. Moira, I thought would be at least B tier. I know that, like, the play style might change a little bit as you climb the ranks with Moira, but I'm very surprised to see, like, Moira this far down on, like, some of the lists. And then D tier. All right. So I look at this tier list. Now, this is either this player has a Pharah or Echo on their team, nothing happens. Or when they're on the other team, they dominate and they said, you know what? I'm putting Pharah and Echo in D tier, because I cannot stand playing against flying heroes. That's what it's what it is. It's one of the two, right? Their teammates are feeding or they're getting rolled. Because those heroes are pretty good. So seeing them in D tier and both of them in D tier, there's something there. On to the next one here. We have a gold DPS and support, plat on tank on PC. This is interesting because we just saw Pharah in D tier on the previous tier list. S tier, Reinhardt, Wrecking Ball. I can see that. Mei, Pharah, and then Mercy. I can see Ryan up there. I know Ryan can play really well in a lot of ranks, and I think Ryan has the highest win rate right now across the board. Wrecking Ball, obviously Wrecking Ball buffs have made Ball a lot better. Mercy, the Mercy changes have made Mercy a lot better. Mei and Pharah. Mei and Pharah have been making my games a living heck lately. Nobody seems to be able to deal with them. So this tier list, the reason why they're in S tier is because whenever they play against Mei and Pharah, they can't win. Or there's an issue with them and nobody's able to deal with them. There you go. That's the issue. That's why, you know, are those heroes S tier on a lot of tier lists? Probably not. But apparently whenever they play ranked, this is what happens. A tier, we see Sigma, we see Orisa, we see Ashe, Cassidy, Hanzo, Reaper, Simtorb, now in A tier. That's more what I expected. Tracer, Widow, Ana, Brig, Bap, Lucio. Once again, we're seeing a lot of the supports more towards the top of the tier list. By far the most balanced season of supports right now. Like when it comes to what you can play. So I like seeing those heroes there is not a surprise. It's very interesting to see. We've seen Lucio a lot higher up on these tier lists in comparison to bronze and silver. And then B tier, we got Doom, Diva, Ramatra, Winston, Zarya. Once again, Zarya in B tier. Bastion, Echo, Junkrat, Sojourn, Soldier, Kiriko, Zen. This is the lowest we've seen Kiriko on these lists. Also, Zen is like one of those heroes that's also going to be player experience. Like, as you climb the ranks, Zen's probably going to be higher up in the tier list because that Discord orb and the team follow-up is so key. I imagine half your games, you either have the Zen who has 10,000 damage and uses their Discord orb, or you have the Zen who's getting spawn camped, or they're just running at them over and over again, and you can't do anything about it, right? That's probably what's happening. And then the C tier, you have Roadhog, Jungler Queen, Genji. I still think Jungler Queen's a bit of a sleeper pick nowadays. Definitely a lot better, but at the same time, it's the playstyle and positioning. If you don't have the positioning with Jungler Queen, then I can see why people would put Jungler Queen in C tier. And then Sombra and Moira in D tier. And now, I'm starting to think the reason why Moira is in D tier in a lot of these tier lists, right, is because the playstyle you see is that TikTok Moira playstyle we've talked about. Moira is in the back line. Moira is going for a lot of damage output. Moira is concentrating on maximum damage output. Moira sometimes doesn't even know they have a healing orb, right? They'll be playing, they'll be like, oh, I have a healing orb? What does this orb do? Maybe it does more damage, right? So as you get further into the ranks, that playstyle might shift a little bit, which is why I'm probably seeing Moira on the bottom of these tier lists. I don't think Moira's that bad. I think Moira's a little bit higher on there, right? But it's very interesting to see where Moira's at with that. So this is a gold DPS, silver tank, and support on console. Started playing when Overwatch 2 was released and got to gold on support. Now play mostly DPS. So let's talk about this a little bit. This is a brand new player to Overwatch. Never played Overwatch 1, started playing Overwatch 2. So it's very interesting to see those type of takes also. Reinhardt, Sigma, Cassidy, Widow, Mercy, and there's more in S tier. After we just had that conversation about where these heroes were in the tiers, we now have Moira in S tier. This is all over the place right now. And Zenyatta, S tier. Like I said, Reinhardt, I think the stats are, I think Reinhardt in a lot of ranks has a 58% win rate right now. And Sigma, in my opinion, is one of the most balanced things. So, like, Sigma being an S tier makes sense. Cassidy's been really good. Widow, that's probably just, like, either you have a Widow who pops off or doesn't, but I get it. Once again, we're seeing Mercy towards the top of the tier list. Moira's now in S tier. The last tier list was D tier. And Zen S tier. Like I said, you either have the Zen who pops off or the Zen who, has a Tracer on him in the back line and they're constantly respawning. A tier, we have Wrecking Ball, Jungler Queen, and here's Jungler Queen again. I still think Jungler Queen is slept on right now, but I think Jungler Queen's pretty strong. Ramatra, Orisa, Soldier, Ashe, Hanzo, Junkrat, Sim, Bap, Ana, Kiriko. This A tier is fine to me. I think that's good. B tier, we see Diva and Winston, which is surprising because Winston's been low in a lot of the tier lists, and Diva's really good against Winston, so seeing Winston and Diva kind of in that same area, you could easily move Diva to A tier on this tier list, and it would still be pretty good. Bastion, Mei, Pharah, Echo, Sojourn, Torb, Tracer, Brig. B tier makes sense. Some of these heroes can be in A tier, I'd say. I wouldn't put many of them in C tier. And then C tier, Roadhog, Zarya, Genji, Reaper, Lucio. And here we go. Now we're starting to see Lucio in C tier. This once again goes to what we've talked about in previous tier lists. You either have the Lucio who is only heal boost in your team, doesn't use speed boost, or you have the Lucio who doesn't know they have heal boost and is just running at the team the whole time using speed boost. And then D tier, Doomfist, and Sombra. We're seeing a lot of Sombra down in D tier, especially in like bronze, silver, now gold. Doom, I'm not surprised by. Doom, in my opinion, is a pretty strong hero right now, but a lot of Doomfist is really about if you're good at Doom. Actually, if you look at like the top 10 leaderboard right now, top 20, you're seeing a lot of Doomfist, and just from experience of playing against really good Doomfist, it can be difficult at times because of just the playstyle of Doom now, but you have to be good at Doom. And I think that's why we're seeing Doomfist a little bit lower on some of these tier lists, is because how often are you getting a Doomfist on your team who's absolutely popping off? More than likely, you have a Doomfist who's right-clicking in and then just trying to do as much damage as possible, running back from spawn and going, where was my healing? Now we have a gold DPS and support, a silver tank, on PC, swapped to main and support when Kiriko was released. I will say this, Kiriko is an extremely fun hero, I'm not surprised. S-tier heroes. Wow, I see a hero here that I'm surprised to see. 2 heroes, actually. We have Ana, Kiriko, Mercy. Totally fine with that. Then we see Diva, Sojourn, Ramatra. Surprised by Diva. I would put Diva in A tier. I think Diva's a strong hero right now. Sojourn, a pocketed Sojourn is still really strong, but we're not seeing as much pocketed Sojourn because of the current meta, but Sojourn can kind of sit around that like A tier, I would say, but if you're constantly in a game where you're pocketing a Sojourn, I can see why you would have S tier. And then Ramatra, every tier list I've seen so far in Bronze, Silver, Gold has been either S tier or A tier for the most part. And then A tier, we have Bap, Moira, Lucio, Genji, Soldier, Ashe, Echo, Cassidy, Junkrat, Reaper, Tracer, Wrecking Ball, Winston, Hog, Sigma. We've seen a very consistent A tier, in my opinion. I am very surprised by Roadhog. I'm really curious on the reason as to why Hog is all over the place. Like, what is it? And maybe people even in the comments can like talk about this. What is the reason behind Roadhog being like having such a variance on these tier lists? Do you just have Roadhogs in your game who are dominating, or do you have Roadhogs who are just unkillable? Which makes it like annoying to play against a Hog who's just unkillable and then goes into your backline. And then obviously, like I think, seeing Winston in A tier, I mean, we've seen Winston more in like the B tier recently, but if we look at the tier list, D.Va is on the S tier, so it makes sense if Winston can be an A tier there. Like, obviously, D.Va just is a really good counter against Winston. People ask why I like D.Va against Winston. The rockets and the burst damage against Winston alone is just really good for D.Va, and at the very least, you can break the bubble really fast, which takes away most of the value that Winston has. B tier, Bastion, Hanzo, Mei, Sim, Widow, Doomfist, Junker Queen, Orisa, and then once again, Zarya, a little bit higher than I expected. I'm very surprised by Zarya on this tier list. And then we have Brig Zen, Torb, Pharah, Reinhardt, and C tier. It's funny because just so you know, right now in top 500, Brig Zen's one of the meta comps. So like when I see Brig Zen in C tier, I'm like, wait a second, what? And at the same time, I understand that. Here's the thing about the Brig Zen playstyle though. Brig Zen playstyle is a very low healing comp, right? You don't get as much heals. It's more about your damage output and then having enough healing and enough like support ults to work together and kind of keep everybody alive just enough to be able to win team fights, right? That's kind of how the comp works. Brig makes Zen unkillable and Zen leaves her orb, right? So seeing Brig Zen there is very interesting. My guess is that when Brig Zen comps are being played, it just doesn't go well because meta is technically a Brig Zen comp right now, or in some cases is Brig Zen. So when people try to play Brig Zen and aren't playing it correctly, it can be awful. But it's such a great comp. Like, Brig Zen played correctly is such a tough comp to play against because there's nothing you can do against the backline, and you take so much damage, you spend more time working on your positioning than you are actually doing something. Surprised by Torb in C tier. Pharah has been all over the place. That's probably just experience with, like, going against flyer heroes. And then Reinhardt in C tier is very surprising. I would not doubt it if I saw Ryan in S tier or A tier consistently because, like, Reinhardt is, and even just looking at like what they've posted in blog posts, Reinhardt is like the highest win rate hero at like 58%. So, and then Sombra again in D tier. It's very interesting to see that. More than likely what's happening is when Sombra's on your team, they're spending more time just not doing anything than actually bringing that full value that Sombra can bring. I'm not saying Sombra's like A tier, but Sombra definitely like is more in that C tier, and if like played extremely well, probably B tier this season based off of the current meta. So now that was 5 tier lists we looked at. Now there was a total of I think 20 tier lists submitted, which obviously still can be a bit of a small sample size. So hopefully even going into the next video we do of this, which would be like probably season 4, curious to see if we can get even more tier lists submitted so we can even have a higher sample size on these. But I'm happy with having 20 tier lists. That's pretty awesome. Here is the averaged out tier list. So we have S, A+, A-, etc. This is the tier list averaged out from all 20 tier lists. Some notes we have here. The average hero is currently ranked in B+. Average tank and DPS is B+. Average support is A-. Not surprised to see that the average support is at A-. Support is just very well balanced right now. There was apparently 6 heroes that were ranked both S and D tier. So we had 6 heroes that were ranked either S tier or D tier at some point. And then Ramatra, Sigma, Cassidy, Hanzo, Sojourn, Soldier, Ana, Kiriko, Mercy. All of those heroes were never ranked below B tier. So, S tier, Kiriko, and Mercy. Not surprised by that. I'm a little bit surprised that, like, averaged out to S tier, but Kiriko and Mercy apparently are S tier and gold. A+ is Ramatra, Sigma, Ana, Wrecking Ball. Ramatra is just, I am so surprised by how dominant Ramatra's, it's got to be Ramatra's ultimate, though. I feel like Ramatra's ultimate is, like, just unstoppable in some ranks right now. So that's your A+ heroes. And A-, we have Reinhardt, Cassidy, Junkrat, Ashe, Soldier, Orisa, Sojourn, Widow, Reaper, Diva. I mean, straight up, just looking at this, like, that seems fine for A+ and A-. Then we have B tier, which is, or B+, which is Lucio, Zen, Bap, Moira, Brig, Sim, Tracer, Bash, and Torb. That seems about right. A lot of the supports in B+, I think, like, as you climb in ranks, you'll start to see some of those heroes go up on tier lists because of, like, the playstyles you can have and, like, the amount of impacts you can have. But, like, seeing B+ here is about reasonable. Then B-, we have Hanzo, Junker Queen, Echo, Pharah, Winston, Doom, Zarya. You know, not bad. I'm a little bit surprised by Zarya being in B-, but not bad. And then C+, we have Genji and Roadhog, which I think is about right. Roadhog is definitely in that spot where Hog is not the best hero. Genji has, like, an interest and impact, either dominates or doesn't do anything. And then, per usual, in most of the tier lists we've seen, Sombra has been the hero that has been at the bottom of tier lists. So, but we do know that eventually Sombra's getting a rework, so I'm not surprised by that. And then no D tier heroes. So this was your averaged out gold tier list. Obviously, this was through 20 tier lists. So if we end up doing one of these in season 4, if you want to be able to post a tier list, if you're on my Discord, you can submit your own tier list and you can write your reasoning, and then we kind of go through it all and do all this. So if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Sub to the YouTube if you haven't. Hopefully you've been enjoying these tier lists. I've had a ton of fun. It's really cool to see. Hope you enjoyed. I hope you all have an amazing day/night.